Today I will read you a scary story from my subscriber. Why don't they leave this house? We bought the camera on a whim. One of those impulse buys that seemed practical at the time, mostly for keeping an eye on our cat, Bean, when we were both stuck at work. It wasn't fancy, just a simple smart camera with a motion sensor, night vision, and a phone app that gave us alerts if it caught anything moving. The first night we set it up, I felt a little ridiculous. I propped it on the dresser across from the bed, aiming it mostly at the door and the foot of the mattress, figuring that's where Bean usually perched when we weren't around. It wasn't some high-tech security system, just a little plastic eye watching over us. The thing is, I never really thought of our bedroom as somewhere that needed watching. It's the one place in the house that's always felt ours, you know? There's comfort in that. The worn-in dip on my side of the bed, the hum of the fan we can't sleep without, her messy pile of books on the nightstand. Nothing bad ever happened in our bedroom, because it wasn't the kind of place where bad things happened. That first night, we fell asleep without even thinking about the camera. No notifications, no weird noises, nothing worth worrying about. If anything, I remember thinking it was a waste of money. Just one more gadget sitting there, silently gathering dust. It was only the next morning, when I rolled over and checked my phone, that I saw the notification. A little ping from the camera app, sent just after 3 a.m. Motion detected during the night. I almost ignored it. It was probably Bean, right? Or us shifting under the blankets. But curiosity won, and I tapped the alert. The feed loaded, grainy night vision filling my screen. There we were, my girlfriend curled into me, my arm draped over her side, both of us dead asleep. Nothing unusual. Just two people in a room, sleeping like they always do. But a few seconds in, something changed. In the corner by the closet, someone was standing there. And they weren't moving. At first, my brain didn't register it. I was still lying in bed, propped on one elbow, the light from my phone screen casting a faint glow across the sheets. My eyes were bleary, and for a second, I thought it was a glitch, some trick of the night vision mode, like a shadow stretched too far. But the longer I watched, the clearer they became. A person. They were standing completely still, their body just barely within the frame. Only the edge of their shoulder and part of their face were visible, but they were close enough to the bed that I could make out the way their head was tilted slightly down, as if they were watching us. My heart started pounding, that sick kind of adrenaline that makes your whole body feel tight, like your muscles are bracing for something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. I scrubbed back on the footage, rolling it back to just before the motion alert. The room was empty, just the two of us, sleeping peacefully. Then, with no sound, no build-up, they were there. Not walking in. Not opening a door. They were just standing there, like they'd always been there, waiting for the camera to notice them. I sat up straighter in bed, the sheets pulling at my waist. I could feel the warmth of my girlfriend next to me, still sleeping, completely unaware that I was staring at a video of us being watched. I didn't want to wake her yet, not until I could figure out what the hell I was looking at. So I hit play again, this time watching every frame. The figure never moved. They didn't creep closer to the bed. They didn't reach out or shift their weight. They just stood there, unmoving, like a piece of the room that didn't belong but couldn't be removed. After about a minute, the footage ended. No disappearing act. No exit. Just the same still figure, and then the recording cut off. That was the part that scared me most. Because if they never left, where the hell were they now? I didn't think. I just moved. I slid out of bed as quietly as I could, feet barely touching the floor, the phone still clutched in my hand. I wasn't fully awake, more running on instinct than logic. My mind hadn't caught up to the fear yet. All I knew was that someone had been in our room, and now they weren't. The closet was the closest spot, so I went there first. I hate to admit it, but my hand actually shook a little when I reached for the door. The knob felt cold, like no one had touched it in hours, which didn't make sense if someone had been standing right there. I eased the door open, expecting something. A person, crouched inside. An empty spot where they should have been. Something to explain it. But there was nothing. Just her side of the closet, clothes packed too tightly on mismatched hangers, a row of shoes at the bottom, and a few shopping bags crumpled in the corner. I even ran my hand along the back wall, like maybe there'd be some hidden panel, a door I'd never noticed before. But all I felt was drywall, cool and solid. The rest of the room was the same. I checked under the bed, even though the gap was barely a few inches. I stood in the doorway to the bathroom, flicking the light on and off like that might shake something loose from the shadows. Nothing. I stood there for a minute, just breathing, my phone still in my hand. The video was right there, proof that someone had been in the room with us, but the room itself was empty. The locks. That's when the fear caught up, slamming into me all at once. If someone had been inside, they had to get in somehow. And if they'd come through a door or a window, I'd see it. I moved through the apartment as quietly as I could, checking the front door, the windows in the living room, even the little balcony off the kitchen. Every single lock was in place. There was no way in. And no way out. I stood by the front door longer than I probably needed to, my hand resting on the deadbolt like I could feel if it had been used recently. It was still locked, not just turned, but fully latched. That satisfying resistance you only get when a door hasn't been opened all night. The rational part of my brain started scrambling for answers. Maybe it was a glitch with the camera, some bug in the app, an old clip mixed in with the new one. I wanted to believe that. Needed to. But the video showed us in bed, in the same clothes we'd fallen asleep in, the same crumpled comforter half kicked off my side. It was from last night, no question. I could feel it creeping up the back of my neck, that cold trickle of realization you get when you know, something's wrong, but you can't prove it. The easy answer was that I'd missed something. A window I didn't check. A door that didn't latch right. I was already building the lie in my head, trying to frame it in a way that would make sense when I told her, whenever I worked up the nerve to wake her. I'd say the camera glitched, or it was some reflection from outside. Something I could explain away. Because if I couldn't explain it, then the only option left was worse. That someone had been in our room. And somehow, they were still here. I took one last slow lap through the apartment, checking every corner, every closet, even inside the kitchen cabinets like an idiot. Nothing. Just me, my girlfriend, and a silent, locked apartment that should have felt safe. Should have. When I finally crawled back into bed, she stirred a little, rolling toward me without waking up. Her hand found my chest, fingers curling into the fabric of my shirt. Comforting herself in her sleep. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, replaying that video in my mind, over and over, that figure, standing so still. Watching us. I lasted until the sun came up. The light coming through the blinds should have felt comforting, the way morning usually dissolves that lingering fear from the night before. But all it did was make everything feel smaller. Like the apartment itself had shrunk around me, pressing in tight, and every corner felt too close. She woke up with her face buried in my shoulder, mumbling something about hating Mondays before rolling onto her back and stretching. I waited until she was fully awake before I said anything. "Hey," I started, too soft, too careful. "Can I show you something?" She gave me a look, part curiosity, part suspicion, the kind of look you get when you've clearly been awake way too long. I pulled up the video. I didn't say anything while it played. I just held the phone between us, and we both watched, the two of us curled up in bed on screen, looking so normal. Peaceful. Then the figure appeared. She sat up straighter, pulling the blanket up with her, her breath catching in her throat. I felt her tense next to me, her whole body going rigid the way people do when they're trying not to freak out. "Who?" she started, but didn't finish. "I don't know," I said. "I checked everything. Doors, windows, all the locks. Nothing's open." She watched the rest of the clip in silence, that crease forming between her eyebrows, the one she gets when she's trying to puzzle something out. "It has to be a glitch," she said, but her voice was too thin, too high, like she didn't believe it even as she said it. I shook my head. "That's us right there. Last night. It's not old footage. She swallowed hard, eyes flicking toward the closet. Maybe it's like someone outside. A reflection? I knew she was reaching for something to hold on to, the same way I had. Something to make it make sense. I didn't want to tell her the truth, that there was nothing to reflect, nothing that could explain how someone appeared inside our locked bedroom without ever coming in or out. Instead, I said, maybe. Because the lie was easier. We spent the whole day pretending nothing was wrong. It was a quiet kind of pretending, the kind couples do when either person wants to be the first to say out loud how scared they actually are. We went to work. Texted each other about normal stuff, groceries, weekend plans, whether Bean had knocked over the plant again. All the usual rhythms of life. But underneath all of it was that shared silence. The thing neither of us wanted to name. By the time we got home, the apartment felt different. Not unsafe, exactly, just occupied. Like the air itself had weight. Every noise was a little too loud, every silence a little too long. We didn't talk about the camera. We didn't talk about the video. We didn't check the app, even though I felt my phone buzz once around lunchtime. Another motion alert. I saw the notification pop up, stared at it for a solid minute, then swiped it away without opening it. It was easier to pretend. That night, we went through our normal routine. Dinner. Dishes. A couple of episodes of some show we weren't really watching. All the while, the camera sat silently across the room, its tiny green light the only reminder that it was still watching. When we finally climbed into bed, she curled into me the same way she always did. One arm draped across my chest, her leg hooked over mine. I could feel her heartbeat against my side, faster than usual. Neither of us said it, but we both knew. The lights went out, and the room felt so much darker than it should have. I lay there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing slowly even out as she fell asleep. I didn't sleep. I didn't even close my eyes. I just lay there, waiting for the camera to catch something I couldn't see. I must have dozed off at some point. Not real sleep, just that thin, restless kind where your body shuts down, but your mind stays half awake, teetering right on the edge of awareness. When my phone buzzed on the nightstand, my whole body jerked like I'd been shocked. I grabbed it without thinking, my pulse already hammering before my eyes even focused. Motion detected. 3:12 a.m. I didn't want to open it. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to leave it alone. To pretend it was nothing, roll over, and go back to sleep. To keep the fragile little barrier between us and the thing that might, or might not, be there. But my thumb was already moving. The feed opened, night vision flickering on, the dim green wash of the room filling the screen. We were there, just like before, her curled up, face half buried in my side. Me, one arm draped over her back. Still. Peaceful. Except we weren't alone. The figure was there again. Same spot, right by the closet. Same stillness, no movement, no swaying, no shifting weight. Just standing there, facing the bed, watching. I could feel it now, that horrible, creeping awareness, the way your body knows when someone's looking at you, even when you can't see them. But there was nothing to hear, nothing to feel, except the warmth of her body pressed against me and the sound of my own breathing. I forced myself to watch the whole clip, every agonizing second, waiting for something to happen. For them to move. Step forward. Do anything. They didn't. They just stood there until the clip cut off. No entrance. No exit. Just there. I held my phone until my hand went numb, the screen still open, the video paused on that grainy, too familiar shape standing in the corner of my bedroom. My bedroom. The place where we were supposed to be safe. I didn't wake her. I should have. But the truth is, I was scared to say it out loud. Like if I woke her up and told her, it would make it real. It was still the middle of the night, the kind of hour where everything feels heavier, like the air itself is leaning in close, waiting to hear what you'll do next. I slid out of bed as quietly as I could, my phone still clutched in my hand, the video still paused. I didn't know why I was doing it, what I thought I'd find, but my feet carried me to the same place as before. The closet. It was open just a crack, exactly like it had been when I checked it the night before. Not wide open, but not fully closed either. Like someone had opened it just enough. I stood there for a second, my hand hovering near the door. In the video, the figure stood right there. A foot away from where I was standing now. Close enough that if they were still here, if they were hiding, they could reach out and touch me before I even saw them move. The thought made my stomach churn. I grabbed the door and yanked it open in one quick motion, like ripping off a band-aid. Nothing. Clothes, shoes, the same cluttered mess it always was. I pushed the hangers aside, ran my hand along the back wall again. Drywall, solid and cool under my fingertips. I even got down on my knees, peering into the space beneath her dresses, half expecting to see feet. But there was nothing. The whole time, my heart was slamming so hard I could hear it in my ears. But there was no one there. No sign anyone had ever been there. And that should have been a relief. But it wasn't. Because the only thing worse than finding someone hiding in your closet is not finding anyone at all. I didn't go back to bed right away. I couldn't. I stood there in the middle of our bedroom, my back to the closet, my phone still clutched in my hand, screen dimming, then going dark. I could feel the weight of the room around me, like I was standing in something's mouth, and it was deciding whether or not to swallow. I kept waiting for something to happen. A creak. A shift of air. The sound of breathing that wasn't mine. But there was nothing. Just the soft hum of the fan and the faint rise and fall of her breathing behind me. I ended up sitting on the edge of the bed, my head in my hands, the phone resting between my knees. My mind kept circling the same impossible loop. If no one came in, and no one left, then where the hell did they go? The only answer that made sense was the one I didn't want to admit. They were still here. Somewhere. I must have made a noise without realizing it, because she stirred behind me, that half-conscious murmur people make when they're somewhere between sleep and waking. Her hand slid across the sheets, fingers brushing my back. "Hey," she mumbled. "Come back to bed." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just lay down beside her, sliding under the covers, her body instinctively curling into mine. We didn't talk about the camera the next morning. We didn't talk about the notification, or the video, or the fact that I spent half the night awake, staring at the same corner over and over again. It wasn't something we decided, not really. It was just easier to pretend. That's the thing about fear, it's easier to live with when you don't give it a name. But I think we both knew, even if we didn't say it out loud. We weren't alone. We hadn't been for a while. That third night was different. Not in any big, obvious way. The apartment still looked the same, the doors were still locked, and Bean still knocked over the same potted plant she always did. But there was a weight to everything now. Like the walls were holding their breath. We didn't talk about the camera. We didn't check the app. We didn't even mention the closet, even though I saw the way her eyes flicked toward it every time she walked past the bedroom. It was a silent agreement. If we didn't look, if we didn't acknowledge it, then maybe it wouldn't be real. We went to bed earlier than usual, but not because we were tired. We just didn't know what else to do. Being awake felt wrong. The longer we stayed up, the more the air in the apartment seemed to press against us, like the whole place was waiting for something. She fell asleep fast, her breathing slow and even within minutes. But I couldn't. I lay there with my eyes half open, the dim glow from the streetlights spilling through the blinds, striping the ceiling in pale orange bars. My phone was on the nightstand, screen down. I hadn't silenced it. Part of me wanted to hear it if the camera sent another alert. But the bigger part of me? The part that was winning? I didn't want to know. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my fingers curled into the sheet, trying to pretend I was somewhere else. Somewhere safer. Somewhere that hadn't been compromised. But then, at exactly 3:11 a.m., my phone buzzed. Just once. Just enough to make my stomach flip. I didn't move at first. I didn't want to see. But you can only hide from something for so long. I reached for the phone with a hand I barely recognized as my own. My thumb hovered over the notification. Motion detected. I waited. Counted to 10. Then 20. Then I tapped it. And the feed opened. The feed flickered on, and there we were again. Same bed, same blanket twisted around my legs, same dip in the pillow where her head rested. The room looked exactly the way I'd left it, nothing out of place, nothing wrong. Except for them. Not in the corner this time. Closer. They were standing at the foot of the bed. The night vision washed everything in that same pale, grainy green, but even through the low resolution, I could see it, the tilt of their head, the slight hunch in their shoulders. They were facing us directly, standing so still they could have been part of the furniture. I felt my own breath catch, even though I knew they couldn't see me watching the recording. It was just a clip. Just a piece of the past, already done. But my body didn't care. Because the figure wasn't just watching. They were leaning in, just slightly, their head tipped down like they were studying us. Like they were memorizing the way we slept, the shape we made together under the covers. And they were close enough to touch. There was something worse about seeing them at that distance. When they were in the corner, they could have been anyone, too far for details, too vague to feel personal. But now I could see the shape of their face. Not the features. The night vision blurred all of that into soft edges. But the way they held themselves, the way they hovered on the edge of movement, like they were deciding whether to step forward or back. They never did. They just stood there, breathing, watching, waiting. And then the clip ended. The room around me was silent, except for the faint sound of her breathing beside me, peaceful, unaware. My hand was shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. I didn't check the closet. I didn't check anything. I just lay there, too scared to move, too scared to close my eyes, and too scared to look away from the dark shape standing at the foot of our bed, burned into my mind even after the screen went black. I didn't sleep. Not that night. Probably not the night after either, if I'm being honest. Time got weird after that. The hours stretched too long, the daylight felt fake, and I started to forget what it was like to feel normal in my own home. The worst part was that I stopped trusting my own senses. Every noise, every creak of the floor, every shifting whisper of fabric when she rolled over in bed, I jumped at all of it. My body was convinced someone was standing right there, just out of sight. Even when the room was empty. Especially when the room was empty. We stopped talking about the camera altogether. The app was still on my phone, but I didn't open it again. It was easier to let it rot there, notifications piling up in the background, than to see what it was catching when we weren't looking. Because here's the thing. That figure, that person, never left. I don't mean I saw them again, not with my eyes. I didn't. But I felt them. Every second I was in that room, every time I walked past the closet or lay down in bed or brushed my teeth with the bathroom door open just a crack, I felt them. There was a presence in the room now. A weight. Like the air itself had grown thicker in that one spot, even when nothing was there. Like something had opened, a hole, maybe, and once it was open, you couldn't close it again. It wasn't that they were in the room anymore. It was that the room itself had been altered. The room had made space for them. And whatever they were, they weren't leaving. We never moved. That's the part people always expect when I tell this story. Like the obvious answer is to pack a bag and run, leave the apartment behind and find somewhere new, somewhere cleaner. Somewhere untouched. But life isn't a horror movie. You've got a lease, a job, routines. Friends who live nearby. You tell yourself it was probably nothing. That you're just being paranoid. That there's no real proof anyone was ever there. Because all you have is a handful of blurry video clips and a feeling you can't explain. And eventually, that's what we did. We stayed. We learned to live with it. At first, I'd check the closet every night before bed, but after a while, even that felt stupid. There was nothing to find. Nothing to fight. It wasn't a person hiding in our house. It was the absence of a person, a hollow space where someone should be, but wasn't. I uninstalled the camera app about a week later. Not because the alerts stopped. Because they didn't. They never stopped. Every night, always around the same time, 3:11, 3:12, 3:13, the camera would ping my phone. Motion detected. But I stopped looking. I couldn't keep watching that same figure standing a little closer, until they were almost beside the bed. Until they were almost beside me. There are things you can unsee. But there are also things you can learn to live with, if you're tired enough. We still sleep with the closet door shut. Always. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I'll wake up and I can feel it, that extra weight in the room, like the air itself is holding its breath. I never open my eyes. Because I know if I do, I might see them standing there. And I don't want to know how close they've gotten.